Okay.
Yeah.
So now, I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with images like this. This is just like a montage, basically, of images off the internet. Various situations arising around the world. We've got China, we've got some graffiti here sort of talking about the difference between the rich and the poor. Massive loads of waste, battery chicken farming, degradation of natural habitats, unemployment, overfishing, the bank fiasco, sweatshops, mass consumption in supermarkets, and children picking through rubbish for a living. Now, if we can move on, I'm really, I can't understand. The problem I have understanding is knowing all these things we know about the world, and we've got access to this information, is why we don't do something about it, why we're sat in a room instead of being out there doing something about it, talking about things. So I want to sort of talk about why potentially this is happening and how we can move forward. So this is an image from Egypt. So obviously an uprising that has a huge impact upon how that country is now managing itself. And people manage to mobilise themselves here using the internet as one of the things that they use. But I'm kind of fascinated, why aren't we doing the same with the environmental situation? So we move forward. So this is a diagram of the human. And it's with help of Tim Jackson and Abraham Maslow that I've constructed this. But essentially, we're capable of all these behaviours. We're capable of looking after ourselves and being quite selfish. We can also be altruistic. We can want novelty, and we can need conservation. We need to maintain certain things, tradition, etc., that enable us to feel at one and parts of our community. We also have desires such as self-actualisation, self-esteem, love and belonging, safety and security, and our physiological well-being, such as food, sleep, etc. So if this is a human, or a diagram to the human, let's look at where we are now. We're right here. We're kind of in a world of want and self. And this is a world that actually capitalism creates in us. It's a world that we must exist within. And it is also a world that causes a lot of suffering, and causes other people a lot of suffering. So, if we're here, how can we start to pull us back to here, back to this sort of centre point, this state of balance? Buddhism would refer to it, I guess, as walking the middle path. So it's this sort of, it's a balanced state of mind. And at the minute, I don't think we are balanced. So if we move on, how did this happen? Obviously, the mechanistic worldview, which basically separated mind and body, and then said that the body is pretty much a machine to be exploited. This is just a picture of a sort of a mechanical digesting duck that doesn't actually digest, but the idea was that it did. But it's just a diagram, so let's move on. We're also educated. Now we're educated in the existing paradigm, so we're very much taught the ways of this type of thinking. So from being a child, from being raised as parents in the West, from being taught in all our separate classes, not integratively, but separately, this whole idea of things being separate, things being partitioned, is reinforced and being... Move on. Yeah. This is a picture of a striation. And this is when glacial ice moves across a rock surface, dragging debris. And what happens over time is these grooves kind of get run into the top of the surface. Well, this is a bit like our brain and our neural pathways. Like the more and more we're conditioned, the more and more we see the world acting in a certain way. And this world does act in a different way all around the world in different places, as I'm sure we've all experienced when we've been travelling. But if we take our world right now, we've got this thing going on where we sort of keep perceiving and keep acting, and we keep sort of developing these connections in our brain, which really inhibit our thinking and being able to move outside. So, this is some album artwork from the Division Bell, but it's just a prime example of what we've done to ourselves. We've kind of separated the whole, and we see ourselves as another, and this, you know, I and you, and our whole language is about this sort of separation. And the problem is, this separation is actually driving the self. It's driving this whole sort of concept of embellishment that we're really sort of striving towards in a quite destructive way. So also there's another thing at work, and it's called denial. So there's a refusal to acknowledge unacceptable truth or emotion or to admit it into consciousness, used as a defence mechanism. I was an addict in denial. So these are just some various quotes I've had heard from people that I've spoken to, and people actually quite close to me. Now, the whole denial thing is actually, we're very good at it because it's to preserve our state of well-being. So it's actually some people have said an evolutionary tool that we use to sort of protect our world, etc., to enable us to exist. So denial has its purpose, but right now, potentially, denial isn't actually serving us too much benefit. So if we move on. Also, we've got this idea of green consumerism. So it's the same values, same beliefs, business as usual. Again, you know, not everyone can afford these green products. If I already own a t-shirt, okay, I'll go out and buy a green one because I'm green. You know, I mean, clothing's out there, we can use, rewear things. The idea of a coffee cup, maybe we should be considering our behaviour of consuming coffee that comes all the way from around the world. So, at the minute, I would say that design, and our thinking is very much at this point, we're creating at the borders. The division is still here, and we do create division between people, whether it's through educational institution, through its membership to clubs, etc. Wall. There's a divide, and we decorate at the divide. We create the divide. So, like, our job as designers, thinkers, and we should go to work on ourselves first, because this is really important, is to enable horizons. We should enable people to experience their own things, their own visions of life. So we need to create a system, or we need to act upon the world to enable people to have freedom of movement. Okay. So this is murmurating starlings, which you're all familiar with in Brighton. And this is a really prime example, a model that I'm going to use for how we can work together, and the role of ethics, freedom and creativity. So this is a beautiful mix of autonomy and interdependence. If I go to the next slide, the terms of murmuration, these are according to Craig Richards, and he did a computer-generated model to simulate the movement of these birds, which has been used in a lot of Hollywood films. But the main principles are matching your speed to that of the birds immediately surrounding you, match your direction to that of the birds immediately surrounding you, maintain your personal space, don't crash into other birds. So each bird is kind of doing these things. But because each bird is doing these things, it creates these amazing emergent patterns and forms. So I'm kind of saying that these are sort of conscious principles that we should all adopt. So if we move on to the next. So for me, and this is something that I think is really relevant, is the permaculture principles, which I'm also sort of studying and doing a training course in right now. But these are principles potentially for our cohesive flight and the realisation of a dynamic, creative and sustainable present. So it's about caring about the earth. I mean, this is just, you know, knowing what we know now, we have to care for it. It is our life support machine. You know, we cannot sort of continue to degrade it. We need to care for each other. We need to care for our own bodies. We need to take care of our own health. We need to take care of the health of others. So this is something that we should sort of take as a fundamental value for life. And also we need to share. You know, just as we would like people to share with us, we have to be willing to share with others. This is actually the only way that we can live on this earth. This is what it looks like. It brings us back to the centre. It makes us sustainable. Oh. Next slide. This is a project I'm working on right now. It's called Vital Reality. It uses an online space and the idea of social networking to create a visible murmuration of cities and to map this, to give people something to feed on. Thanks very much. That was really quick.